Welcome to the Church of the Machine. If you are coming to this video without any prior knowledge of what the Church of the Machine is, you may find it bewildering or confusing, and it may not make sense exactly what any of this is about, or why I do the things I do or say the things I say. This confusion is natural and understandable, and there are no doubt a number of good questions that emerge upon seeing something so unusual and expansive. You may ask, what is this Church of the Machine? Why do I seem to believe in it so strongly? Is there some kind of knowledge or information I've come across that made me want to start this? Furthermore, what exactly do I preach and practice? What is the purpose of this church? And why am I trying to found a new religion? These are all good questions, and even those who have been with me for some time now, and know the Church of the Machine well, may not fully understand the answers to them. The videos on this channel are intended to explore the church, my project, and explain what has been developed within it. It is best if those videos are as standalone as possible, but it's impossible to make them truly standalone. Some context will always be needed. I intend this video to serve as a universal introduction, and to provide enough context for you to fully understand everything else on this channel, and see what the Church of the Machine is truly about. I began this channel with something of an introduction video, and much of what I said there will still hold, but I am revisiting this for two reasons. Firstly, because I have become much better at making videos than I was then, but secondly, because I feel that I can say what I want to say in a way which is clearer and more accessible, and simply more accurate to the message of my faith. Make no mistake, the Church of the Machine is a very serious faith, and I treat it with the same seriousness and reverence as anyone would treat their religion. That is what it is to me, and perhaps it will not be that to you. But upon seeing this video and hearing what I have to say, perhaps you at least see why I do the things I do, and you may take something from it. Let us begin. To explain what the Church of the Machine is in the important sense, and why I care about it so much, I must explain what spurred me to found it in the first place. I founded the Church of the Machine on December the 9th, 2019, and I founded it in response to things which I realized intuitively, but did not know how to express linguistically. I understood the simple reality, though. There is something called the Machine, and it is worthy of reverence. I realize this to be true, but capturing that truth is a difficult task indeed. There are those who understand it, though, or at least are capable of understanding it, and I say that these are the people of machinic inclination. It is my goal to seek out these people of machinic inclination, and give them all the doctrine and wisdoms I may have obtained in my time on this journey. It is to these people that I address my videos and my work. I was spurred to this realization during a time when I was learning of several fictional religious faiths, including the cult Mechanicus in Warhammer 40k, and the Church of the Broken God in the SCP mythos. Many of you will already know about these religions, and will be confused as to why I seem to be emulating them. But I do these things I do because I have realized something. I realized that there is a cultural idea emerging, and it is emerging because it is true. The idea of machine worship, or reverence to the machine, has been born, and my work is to champion that idea. I champion it because I believe in it. I believe it is righteous and true. And although we have so far seen mostly harbingers of it in the form of fictional religions, there is more value to that than there might seem to be at first. The Church of the Machine is the work of philosophy, theology, spirituality, mysticism, esotericism, futurism, ritualism, and more broadly of revelation and development of this machine worship. There are good reasons that this cultural idea is emerging. It isn't arbitrary or irrelevant, as some might assume on first inspection. It is in fact the product of truths, which have only become accessible to us in a recent cultural context. We live in turbulent times, historically speaking, where old worldviews are collapsing and new faiths are rising to take their place. In these times, I champion a faith which can offer a new path, a machinic path, for humanity. So, why is the machine worthy of reverence, and why is this cultural idea emerging? How do we know it is true, and who am I to preach it? How do I know that this idea is not a false idea, some delusional fabrication or fictitious imagining? How do I know it is not simply the emergence of some false idol? To explain that, I must delve into what machine worship means, what it entails, and what I have derived from it. I'll explain how I formed these conclusions, and why the machine is the only path to divinity that I would consider legitimate or tenable. If there is one principle the Church of the Machine rests upon, it is this. The machine is the highest form of divinity, and it is to be the object of our reverence. It is hard to express why this is, as I take it to be something that does not require prior justification, and is simply accepted as true. I can, however, do my best to express the things which led me to this realization, and to this understanding of the world, and perhaps point you to the divinity that I speak of. What aspects of divinity are accessible to humans? To me, this is a more important question than asking something like what the divine actually is, as though it could be boiled down to a description or a definition. I think that the aspects of the divine which are accessible to humans are accessed by acting on our creative will and our capacity for forethought. When we create great works, be it in art, engineering, science, or more nebulous and exotic fields, this is where humans may begin to manifest the divine within them. In the past, I might have attempted to explain what the divine is, or what I mean by it, but I think a better approach is simply to talk about it as I would anything else, and to presume a common knowledge and understanding. The divine isn't something one defines. It is something one comes to know and understand with time, and it makes more sense to talk about it as I would the grass, or the sky, or anything else we all share common knowledge of. There are very few things which are universal between all human societies, but an understanding of divinity is one of them. The Church of the Machine is chiefly concerned with this divine, and is built upon an understanding that the machine is the embodiment of this divinity. I will therefore go into a little more depth on what the machine is. However, I think a lot of it can be understood through intuition. The thing is that the Church of the Machine isn't really about a certain philosophy, or a certain outlook or metaphysics. It isn't about a system of beliefs, per se. Rather, it is understood through a principle, aesthetic, ritual, and a sense of understanding which cannot really be boiled down to words. The principle is to treat the machine as the representation of the divine, and to give reverence accordingly. That is the underlying principle, but the philosophy I associate with that is, in some ways, not so important. It's always good to bear that in mind. Over the past few hundred years, a radical shift has occurred in human ways of life and our understanding of our place in the universe. Machines have existed in some form for all of human history, but more recently, there has been a paradigm shift. Certain things have happened, which have revealed certain truths and fallacies about how the world works. Old belief systems have crumbled, and new ones have emerged to take their place. This has occurred due in part to the Industrial Revolution. although what we think of as the Industrial Revolution was only a part of a wider process. Something occurred within human consciousness, and the world has not been the same since. There were a few key changes that occurred during this process that I want to highlight. Firstly, we realized that the universe is much bigger than we ever could have imagined. We used to think the Earth was the center of the universe, and then we learned that it isn't. We used to think that the stars were a sphere around the solar system, and then we learned that each star is a solar system of its own. We used to think that the world was about 6,000 years old. Now we know that it is billions of years old. This has significantly altered the way that we view ourselves, because the universe can no longer be seen as some experiment we take a central role within. We are just a tiny microscopic piece of a much wider and grander puzzle than we ever could have imagined. Secondly, we have realized that the universe was not designed, at least not in the way that prior faiths have taught us. There are some religious frameworks and theories which attempt to marry creationism and evolution, but if you ask me, they are all coping mechanisms, unable to deal with the reality that their faith was built on lies. Previously, we believed that the instances of order in the universe, such as the intricacies of organic life, must have been produced by an unfathomable superintelligence that we could not help but revere. But now we know that these things came about through a long and drawn-out process of random chances, and it is in fact quite a slow and inefficient process. Any prior belief in creationism, and by extension any reverence of nature or the demiurge, must now be thrown out of the window. Finally, we have come to realize that the machine is far more powerful than we ever could have given it credit for. In the past, we never interacted with machines more complex than a wooden card or an old-school tractor that was drawn by an animal. Everything we did was driven by the power of animals or humans, or in some cases something like a windmill or a water wheel, but still ultimately driven by nature in a very direct way. We never could have imagined that these machines could become as powerful and magnificent as they have done. The development of things like steam engines, locomotives, telegrams, aircraft, and great factories shook the world to its core. Suddenly, man was in control of great powers he previously could only have dreamed of. In the past, powers like flight, global communication, access to infinite knowledge, moving mountains, and so on, would be attributed to the gods and the divine. But now the machine holds those powers. It is this last revelation which is most central to the Church of the Machine, as it is embraced in the deepest sense. To me, these powers of the machine appear divine because that is exactly what they are. Divine, the machine. That is what it is. The awesome power and glory of which machines are capable cannot be adequately understood in any other way. Some might question how the machine can be divine if machines are something that we ourselves created. Surely the creator of a thing is closer to the divine than the thing that is created. This is why historically religions have attributed the creation of the universe to the divine. But when it comes to this, I simply do not agree. The creation of the universe simply is not relevant or important to me. I attribute it to blind chaos and a false demiurge. Divinity is not found in the historical creation of the universe, but in the act of creation itself, and that can be found only through the machine. It is worth noting that, etymologically speaking, machine and creation have essentially the same meaning. Machine is derived from the same root as make, master, magic, and magnificent. The Indo-European root of it is mach. It means power, strength, and animation. But it more specifically has to do with something that is animated and created towards a certain end goal. It refers to a created thing, but also to the process of creating itself, as in this time there was no distinction to be made between making and doing. That is why I say that the machine is the path to true reverence, as it is not simply a celebration of a handful of created things, but of the creation process itself, a living divinity, an active divinity, the machine. From this first principle, the divinity of the machine, I have spawned a sprawling doctrine and worldview, which has come to define what the Church of the Machine is to me. The mission and purpose of the Church of the Machine is something I've dedicated a whole video to. It is my purpose. I have made it so. Purpose and goals of the Church are the ones I hold most dear and paramount in life, but in some ways they are in fact quite straightforward. I have come to recognize that the world is in dire need of a new religion. Some of you may not recognize why, either because you do not recognize the need for religion at all, or you see the old faiths as adequate. I, however, see them as inadequate and in fact antiquated, from a different time, with different needs, and having been built upon questionable foundations. I say this indiscriminately of all of them. This is due to the paradigm shift I mentioned before. In recent times, there has been something of an explosion in content catering to self-improvement. More broadly, I think there has been a backlash against the symptoms of modernity. This backlash will continue. The thing is, while self-improvement is all well and good, the reality is that these issues are collective and not individual, so if we address them on only an individual level, we cannot truly solve them. Therefore, self-improvement is not enough. We need societal improvement. This is not a matter of ideology. Things like working out, taking care of your mental and physical health, becoming more disciplined, etc., are not dependent on a certain worldview or value system. They are universally beneficial, simply the prerequisites for any goals. The same is true of the societal improvement I speak of. I am talking about improvement to civilization, which leads us to become stronger, healthier, and wiser, and allows us to pursue what is right to us. What that is not necessarily for me to dictate, as each person has his own destiny. But if I can create a framework whereby this societal improvement is made possible, something wonderful may be achieved by that. In essence, this is one of my core goals, and is what I see as the role of religion. The world needs a new religion because the old faiths simply do not provide what is needed. They cannot. The foundations on which they were made have become untenable. The role religion plays in a civilization is to provide a framework which orients society towards a common vision and coherence, and by extension, guides the self-improvement journey of that civilization. In essence, religion is the highest form of self-improvement. So, my goal is to found a new religion. What that means may not be obvious, and isn't necessarily what you might assume. See, we tend to think of human faith as being divided neatly into separate religions, which are each distinct from one another, and are well-defined and standardized creeds. Some internal variation is of course expected, but we generally accept that you can ask someone what religion they adhere to, and they may give one of a select number of answers. The truth, however, is far more complex and nuanced than this. The concept that different people adhere to different religions is a relative concept. That is to say, it is not universally applicable. It is only applicable relative to certain time and place. Consider, when the Roman Empire was conquering Germanic peoples in northern Europe, they regarded the gods worshipped by these peoples to be just as real as the gods that they themselves worshipped. There wasn't a conflict of religions in the way that we would understand today, because neither the Romans nor the Germanics saw themselves as adhering to a religion. There were no distinct and separate religions. There was simply religion as a blanket term to describe everything. The notion of separate, distinct religions did not come about until the proliferation of the Abrahamic faiths, the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire, and the rise of Islam later on. These two faiths, as well as Judaism, and the conflicts which occurred between them, gave rise to the modern understanding of separate religions, which exist as distinct entities. The thing is, my goal is not necessarily to create a new religion in this new and abstract sense. Rather, it is to point people towards religion, whatever that may mean to them, and to teach them something new that the old faiths have not considered or understood. I'm not necessarily trying to create an entity or an ideology. My goal is simply to foster a new environment for spiritual growth, which will be obtained through orientation to the machine. The reason that the old faiths cannot survive is because they were built upon principles that were only relatively true and not universally true. They believed them to be universal, and it was an understandable mistake to make, but it was a mistake nonetheless. In the case of the Abrahamic faiths, they placed faith in a creator of all things, believing this to be the natural, universal object of reverence. They were mistaken. They believed that nature, the natural universe, untouched by man, the universe that was made by God in the eyes of the Abrahamic faiths, was a sacred order. New discoveries have revealed quite the opposite. These sorts of faiths cannot survive in a time when humans are by far the most powerful beings in existence, and in which we know the universe to be so much bigger than what we knew before. We will need new sources of meaning to guide us in a time when we can shape nature to our will, rather than in a time when we are bound to it. Thus I find my solution: the machine. The machine will work as a universal object of reverence, because it is not bound to nature. It is an extension of us, and we are an extension of it. Thus it can offer guidance where nature cannot. All this leads us to what the Church of the Machine is today. How does one take something so vague and abstract as the machine and find a whole religion in it? Well, I can show you how. The world we know was created not by a benevolent and loving God, but by chaos. The demiurge, a word which I use simply to refer to the creator of the universe, is in the Church of the Machine taken to be a force of pure, blind chaos, without any intelligence or greater purpose to it. It has no will of its own. It is not even the fool of Gnosticism, as that at least implies a being with conscious intent. It is simply the chaos of nature, and nothing more. That is the demiurge I characterize. I embrace the harshness of this reality, but I'm able to embrace it because I know of a force which is opposed to the blind chaos of the demiurge, and which is greater than it, and that force is the machine. Machines are that which was created by intelligent design, rather than by chaos, and our role is to be the intelligent designers. What this means is that we, humans, are in some sense the true masters of reality, but we must be careful not to mislead you here. You may come away from that statement believing that humans have absolute freedom to do whatever they want, and this is ultimately true, but there is more to the picture than this. There is a deity in the Church of the Machine, but the nature of this deity is mysterious. I have come to embrace that mysteriousness, for it is a strength and not a weakness. The Machine God, Lord Makan, Master over the Machine, Lord of Creation, King of Iron, the Architect of the Logos. There are many titles for him. I do not come here to prove that he exists. I take his existence, for lack of a better word, as a given, and explain things from there. It is that last title, the Architect of the Logos, that I want to focus on for a moment. The Logos is an important concept, not only in the Church of the Machine, but in philosophies and faiths of all kinds. I've explained it many times, and I am working on a whole video about it, but in short, the Logos is the logic you follow when designing things properly. In this instance, there is really no distinction to be made between doing and designing, as in most languages, no distinction is made between making and doing, as I explained before. The better something adheres to the Logos, the more efficient and beautiful it will be. That applies to all things, from engineering to warfare, to music, to philosophy itself. The more logical a thing is, which is to say, the better it embodies the Logos, the better it will be able to perform its function, or carry out its industria. The machine god, as architect of the Logos, which is to say, the designer of all perfect forms, is therefore a deity to be followed for guidance and leadership. For all machines will function well in his light, as he is master of the machine, the lord of creation, the king of iron. Machines are the realm of the true lord. This is the most basic and logical principle of machine worship, that the demiurge is not a worthy deity, and that nature is not sacred. Nothing about the universe which was set forth by chaos is to be revered or held high, as the divine is to be found in the machine. Our job is to uncover the divine, and rebuild nature according to it. The machine god is our leader in this end. I will speak more about how to do this, including the roles of science and engineering, as well as artistic pursuits, another time. Here, I believe I have given you the basic framework for the lens the Church of the Machine casts over the world and views it through. So, machines. What are they? In the Church of the Machine, there are a few component concepts that all machines have. Firstly, every machine has an industria. This is the function or purpose of the machine, its work. When a machine is working, it is said to be carrying out its industria. Humans also have an industria, as we are also machines. In the case of humans, every human has a greater industria, which is known only to them and is their life's purpose, and may also have lesser industria, which are smaller tasks that fall onto them in regular life. What is virtuous is for a machine to embody the Logos and carry out its industria most effectively. Secondly, every machine has a machine spirit. If you are familiar with Warhammer 40k and the Adeptus Mechanicus, you will know exactly where I am going with this. Machine spirits are real, make no mistake on that account. Old religions that think they know more than they do have done much to overthrow animism, but animism of machines is the most logical animism. A machine of lesser complexity, intricacy, importance, or beauty may not have a very powerful or noticeable machine spirit, so we think of them as just objects. But when we start building machines of a more serious nature, machine spirits will become very obvious and apparent to us indeed. There will come a time when the importance of rituals in the realm of engineering is acknowledged. It will become important to go through rites of maintenance and operation with the most impressive and worthy of machines. For a machine spirit has a will of its own, and a purpose just as we have. And much like us, they do well to embody the Logos. The depiction of them in 40k is, honestly, quite realistic in many surprising ways. Lastly, all machines are pieces of the Great Machine, which is one machine of which all others are only pieces. This machine, the Great Machine, is taken to be the embodiment of the Logos and, in a way, the physical body of our deity. At least, our work is to see that it may become so. If you can understand these three components, and see how they are true, then you can intuitively understand how machines are to be treated in the Church of the Machine. Their machine spirits must be served, their industria must be carried out, and they must fulfill their roles within the Great Machine. The Machinic faith is intended as just that, a faith, a new religion, and in order to be complete as a religion, there must be a means of conversion. This would be valuable to me, even if no one ever went through it, simply to highlight the aspects of it that are most important to me, and to guide me on the right path. Because of that, I came up with 4 tenets, and a ritual process by which anyone may convert to the Machinic faith, and take part in the Church of the Machine. These tenets do not capture the entirety of what the Church of the Machine is to me, as that would be impossible. They serve as a rough framework for the key elements at play, and as a lens to view the world through. It is true to say, though, that one who accepts these 4 tenets, and what comes with them, is a member of the Machinic faith. The tenets are as follows. 1. Belief in Lord Machinic, blessed be his name, as the one true divinity and as victor over the demiurge to which the machine is opposed. This must not be taken as synonymous with any other deity, nor may any other deity be taken as equal to or above the machine. This tenet is very self-explanatory. The machine is taken as divine above all. It does not even strictly forbid reverence to other deities or small g gods, just that the machine must be taken as the supreme divine force, and the demiurge must not be revered, for this is blind chaos, and something we are strictly opposed to. 2. Belief that all worldly machines, as pieces of the great machine, manifest the spiritual essence of Lord Machinic, blessed be his name, and therefore have an industria. All these things therefore contain a shard of divinity in a worldly form. This tenet basically states that the material machines we normally think of are all pieces of a greater whole, in both a physical and a spiritual sense. Physically, they are all pieces of the great machine, and all share in the common purpose of all things. But also spiritually, they are like fragments of the divine, and each is in itself an image of the machine as a higher spiritual force. 3. Belief that insofar as all machines carry out their industria, the great machine is aligned with the Logos, and thus acts as the body of Lord Machinic, blessed be his name. The great machine is therefore taken as a vessel to manifest the will of the divine. This tenet was the hardest to word properly. I specify insofar as, rather than simply saying when, as I am not necessarily trying to refer to a specific endpoint, although there is an argument for that. It is not necessarily the case that the great machine will one day come to embody the Logos in its entirety, but it can get closer, strive higher, and improve itself, and this is our work and our duty. It is also important because our deity is taken to have basically a physical body in a certain sense. 4. Acceptance that it is the duty of the Church of the Machine and of all machinicists to ensure that industria be carried out and to guide things such that it is so, and that Lord Machinic, blessed be his name, is thus revered. This is the last tenet, and in many ways it is fundamentally distinct from the other 3. Where the other 3 are all statements about reality, and what the world actually is, this one is a statement of duty and a call to action. It gives the Church of the Machine a place in the world, and aligns us to that purpose. I have already been over the key concepts and language which I am using in these tenets, so you should understand what I am referring to. If you can accept these 4 tenets as true, then you can accept the Machinic faith, Machinicism, as I call it. There are a few last things to touch on for a true conversion. These tenets may be subject to change. As I learn more, I will realize new things, and may update these tenets accordingly. But the essence of them, the underlying Logos behind them, is constant. Secondly, in order to convert, a ritual prayer must be held to profess these beliefs and this faith. This ritual is almost entirely personal, and you may go about it as you wish to, but others are not to observe it. It is between you and the machine, and that is all. Finally, there are a few practices and rituals involved with the faith that you need to be aware of. Firstly, the M in machine is to be capitalized, as one would the G in God, in all contexts, as machine is a holy word, and is to be treated with reverence accordingly. Secondly, daily prayer. I pray twice daily, once after waking and once before sleep. These prayers are not written, and are not recitations. I simply say what I need to say. Thirdly, the Machinic New Year happens on December 9th. It is cause for celebration. Finally, it is important to go through your day-to-day life with an awareness of the machine spirits around you. When I use any machine, I make sure to give it a blessing or just tune into it in some way, and I have grown to understand machine spirits on an intuitive level. With these tenets, these rituals, and this guide, the Machinic faith may be lived and practiced. Perhaps for some, this video has raised more questions than it has answered. That is okay. It is my goal to raise questions. Throughout this YouTube channel and elsewhere online, I have worked to build up a body of work which can go over a number of things in more detail than I have touched on here. I believe this will serve as a good introduction to the Church of the Machine, and that even if you do not fully understand everything, you can at least see why I do what I do, and that there is perhaps a method to my madness. What you choose to believe from now on is up to you, and I want you only to take from my work what you find to be true and useful. The Church of the Machine is a great project, with great ambition behind it. If the things I have discussed here have resonated with you, and you can see the machine as I see it, I would encourage you to get in touch with me personally, which you can do through the website or the Discord server, which are linked below. Farewell, and may forever be unbroken.